Welcome to Future Ready Live, where we talk about topics that will help CPAs, CGMAs, and their organizations prepare to adapt and thrive in a fast-changing world. I'm your host, Tom Hood, the EVP of Business Engagement and Growth at the AICPA SEMA, the largest global body of professional certified accountants in the world. Today, we're going to be talking about a super hot topic, generative AI, ChatGPT, to create exponential productivity for CFOs. Joining me is Don Tomoff, CPA, MBA. Don, say hi to the audience.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Tom.
It's great to have you here. Now, if data is the new oil, then Don is the refinery. And you're going to find that to be very true. Don's an Excel wizard and obsessed with using technology for exponential increases in productivity. He's a Top Gun instructor at our Business Learning Institute, and I'm proud to call him a friend. Over 30 years of broad accounting, finance, and consulting experience, manufacturing, retail, nonprofit, and consulting, he's done it all, currently providing consulting services to executives and organizations ranging from closely held to publicly traded organizations. At Invenio Advisors, he's focusing on helping companies think differently, which manifests itself in many ways to drive improvement and gain effectiveness in managing a client's business. He works to connect the dots to drive improvement in productivity, which is not as intuitive as it may appear. Consulting services he provides include technology integration consulting, speaking engagements, business integration, use development and executive training, management reporting, development and outsourcing, data analytics, technology tools, advanced training on applications like MS Office, Adobe PDF, and now ChatGPT. So, Don, welcome to today's show.
Wow, thank you, Tom. That sounds like a lot when you walk through it like that. I appreciate the invite to talk about really what's probably my favorite topic for 2023.
Yeah.
And you and I go back a little ways, so you know how my gears work, and boy, they're working overtime with this topic.
You're in for a big treat in today's show. So we go back to my days at the Maryland Association of CPAs when I found you at the IMA National Conference in 2018. I think it was Indianapolis, if I'm not mistaken.
It was, yes.
Where I took your course, and the rest is history. So tell us about your obsession with productivity and technology.
I'm gonna go all the way back, and then Tom, you're in the age range where you can totally relate to this. But I'm gonna go back to when PCs first came into industry, or into Price Waterhouse at the time, and I was the guy back then sitting in the PC room whenever there was spare time, trying to figure out how to use Lotus 1, 2, 3, VisiCalc, whatever it was, and from there, every organization that I've ever been with, and I think Joanne Stores, when my last industry stint, I was the VP of Finance. And one of the things I realized, did all the SEC reporting, etc., I used to sit there and go, boy, I thought public companies were wired. They're not, okay? And as much as you might think. And I went, if we're having these issues, every organization has these issues, which ultimately led me to going to a small accounting firm in business advisory for 4 years, and then ultimately setting up my own business. And to your point on MACPA, and I still tell this story about the Maryland Association, I started working with you and your team, and to this day, you're like a case study in how it really needs to be done. Learning doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah.
And to your credit, I always admired how you don't just talk about it, you live it. Okay. You were pushing your team 2 days a month, which is a huge commitment.
Yeah.
And we went like 18 months, I think, before COVID hit, and we made a lot of progress, but it's drip, drip, drip.
Yeah. And it's practice, which,
Yeah.
you help them do. And to this day now, Skip's retired and Laura is the new CFO there, and she's
Yep.
continuing those practices. So kudos to you for helping lead the way.
It was
And I think
fantastic.
you're going to hear Don talk a little bit about this idea, the notion of that drip, 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 and you got all your little techniques that I'd love you to share as we do this. Let's start before we jump back into ChatGPT. Let's start with our initiative at the Future of Finance. So you've been active in our Future of Finance Leadership Advisory Group. You were there at our summit, our first summit in Nashville. And we like to say our purpose is to transform the profession by reimagining the future of finance to power trust, opportunity, and prosperity. So talk about your experience and what you think about what we're trying to do here and your role in it.
I think it's fantastic. I'm glad you started off with that. One of the challenges, especially when you're in a senior finance role, is being able to bounce ideas off of people, understand what others are doing. And when and my brother Bill and I were at that Nashville conference, what really struck me was you got 2-3 days of intensive brainstorming sessions, working with sessions with peers. And you come back not only inspired, but really motivated to keep going. And what you guys have done, which is you keep adding, every couple months you'll have topics, whatever. It's fantastic. I think it's a phenomenal initiative, and I believe it's making a lot of headway.
Yeah, to your point, the peer interaction is the secret sauce. I mean, we've been able to facilitate, we're capturing the learning, and the group has been extremely open to sharing. And what we're noticing is, regardless of the size, I mean, we've got some huge corporations there. We got a couple large middle markets. I mean, it's a big mixture. And yet, as I would say, they all feel like they're walking the same journey. And it might be different scale and scope, but they're all doing the same journey of transformation and trying to get ahead in this crazy world. And I think having that interaction and sharing is just so powerful.
And I think the point you just made, the scale and scope is different, and it is. But what really comes out, and we've talked about this before, is the mindset.
Yeah.
Everybody's thinking the same way, and you start to realize, hey, I'm not on this trip alone.
Yeah. I think that's the biggest thing that they've said, is that they really appreciate us getting them in a room, because then they can take that back to their teams and their CEOs, et cetera, and say, we're not alone here. And this is what everyone's going through. And here's some new things we learned. But yeah, it's pretty wild from that. All right, now let's get right to the meat that you love, is ChatGPT. So what are some of these opportunities that generative AI can provide? And before you start, I got to say, you need to follow Don on Twitter. I mean, on LinkedIn and Twitter, but LinkedIn especially. He shares like there's no tomorrow. And that's one of the true attributes that you do, Don. It's just amazing in terms of giving back. So, all right, so tell us what are some of the examples, and what are you thinking about generative AI right now?
Tom, as you know, and I take a little bit of a different approach. In fact, recently I watched the AICPA town hall, where I believe it was Jason Statz that was on there, and he talked about how firms can use it. And the one part, and it was a fantastic, I want to say 17-minute conversation, but the one part I thought was fantastic, where he said, what you really want to do is you want to step in and start learning this. Okay, because as you learn it, you're going to be able to expand your skill set, provide advisory services. And the point he made, which I absolutely loved, was every one of your clients is going through this.
Yeah.
Okay. Everyone. And I guarantee you, at the Future of Finance Summit in December, this is going to be the big overriding topic. I call it the elephant in the room. And I recently had someone say, well, this is going to be the end of workers. Okay. And I go, well, that's okay. It's not. I don't believe that. But in the meantime, we got to learn how to use it, because if we don't learn how to use it, we're not going to be working.
Yeah.
And I truly believe that.
That's a big, true big reality. And one of the things, back to your story of when we were both starting out, I was the guy that bought the first IBM PC in our team. I think I was at a architectural firm as like a assistant controller. Brought that PC home over Thanksgiving weekend with floppy disks and started learning it because it just had so much potential. And
Yeah.
obviously, but interesting enough, back then, Wall Street Journal had an article that said Excel is going to be the end of accounting. And because it automated those 13 columns, and it was like actually the exact opposite. They've had a study since it, and actually accounting just exploded after that because suddenly you could do more with less, right? You had a tool, and that just opened up everything. I think that's going to be the exact same thing for ChatGPT and our accounting profession. It's only going to eliminate you if you let it, right? The idea is we need to learn how to work with the machine, not race against it, because we won't win that race. But so tell us some of the thoughts and things that you're doing that really.
I'll throw out a couple of ideas, and as you know, Tom, I started in December 5th actually, and every day I'm working with ChatGPT. Okay, it'd be first thing in the morning. At some point, I'm going to spend 30 minutes to 45 minutes tapping the pipe. Okay, and what you realize is the prompts obviously are critical. You'll try things that you don't know what you're going to get, and it'll absolutely crush you. Okay, because it's that good. And you'll get things where it's like, well, that's garbage. Okay. And I think what a lot of people will do is they'll get the that's garbage response and then they leave it. Okay. I'm like, no. And where others, like, we've talked with Glenn Hopper, and I love, he wrote the book on digital finance. It's fantastic. I highly recommend that, by the way. But I approach it from the standpoint, and think about your team at Maryland Association. If I'm sitting with the finance team that reports to the CFO controller, how can you guys use this to make what you do a lot easier? And and you've heard this so many times, but I always say, when you leave this discussion today, what are you doing tomorrow that's going to change the way you work? And that's the way I look at ChatGPT. People are going into, we can automate this, we can automate this. How about if I have it help me write Excel formulas? Okay. And I have a new thing that I tell CFOs. I said, and this is not, hyperbolic, it just is. Think of 5 things you want to automate in Excel, and every person should be able to do that. Okay, I want to automate setting up printing and printing my reports. That's 5 different sheets. You can automate that with ChatGPT. And I don't care, in 1 hour, I can teach people to automate things using VBA because ChatGPT does everything for you, including telling you how to put it in. So I had an IT CTO of a client of mine explain this to me. He says, Don, the way I think about ChatGPT is it's a force multiplier. He goes, if you're average, it makes you good. If you're good, it makes you excellent. If you're excellent, it makes you untouchable. And I go, that's a great way to think about it. It's just, how do you apply it to your world?
Yeah. Now, again, you probably have to be careful. You have to have some idea of what you're going to get out of it, because sometimes it does what they say, hallucinate or whatever.
Absolutely.
And obviously, with company data, the privacy issue would be, so I wouldn't use your real company data. But the things like writing Excel things or helping you summarize a big piece of text or look into a PDF. And I know you're posting like 15 more tools that you can use. But I'll give you my example. I had a PowerPoint. I had this big internal PowerPoint deck with all kinds of speaker notes. And we were told, don't go giving it away with those speaker notes. And I'm like, man, I'm going to have to spend all that time cleaning out every one of those speakers. It's going to take me 2 or 3 hours. So I finally said, you know what? I'm going to try chat. I hear Don talk about it. All right. So I went to ChatGPT. I said, how do I strip out PowerPoint, all the notes in a PowerPoint deck? And you're right. It went back. It gave me VBA code. Of course, I hadn't done a VBA macro in PowerPoint, but it said step by step. Here's what you do. Go in there and click open file. Do this. Copy it in. Run it. And it cleaned out all that in like 5 minutes. I mean, just insane, right?
And Tom, what you just touched on was it walked you through step by step. It just, it may not work,
Right.
but to be able to think of what you said, I don't have to hand this to somebody to delete speaker notes. I'm going to just ask ChatGPT and see what happens.
Yeah. Yeah.
And and it did it. So having that connection of saying, "Hey, maybe I can use it or I'm going to try,"
Yeah.
is absolutely key.
And it literally was 5 minutes. I mean, so you're not like, it's not like a big time suck. It's just like, okay, try the query and do that and see what happens. And it just really, it really rocked it. So yeah.
Yeah,
What are
great
some of the things?
example.
What are some of the things you've done that like really surprised you? All right, talk about the tweet thing that you did setting up this thing.
Okay, great story. So, Tom, as we were preparing for this session, I I use an automation tool called IFTTT, if this then that. And if you don't follow Tom on Twitter, follow him on LinkedIn too. But what I do is every time Tom tweets, his tweets are that valuable, they get scraped to a Google spreadsheet. And that's what IFTTT does. I don't do anything, it grabs the content for me. So I don't have to go to Twitter to do what I'm describing. So I said, well, what I want to do is I want to take Tom's tweets for this year, starting in January, run them through IFTT, run them through ChatGPT, and just give me the key points. So I took them in 50 piece blocks, said, give me the top 25 points. It listed them out. I pasted them into a Google Doc and then highlighted the things that were relevant. Skills shortage, the pipeline challenge, all the things that ChatGPT is going to have an impact on. And it made it a 10-minute effort, okay, to go through basically 150 tweets that you've put out there, Tom.
It's wild, and it allows you to like now think about what we wanted to talk about today. So
Yeah.
you already laid out some of those things. So that's like huge from that standpoint. So
Yep.
so talk about a couple of those pieces. Any of those that really stuck out that you go, yeah, I want to talk a little about that.
Well, I think that the one piece, the skills shortage and the gap, okay, and I believe that it's real, and that point I made about force multiplier is key, and it doesn't, to your point, and I do want to emphasize, don't put confidential information in there ever. Don't put any company sales, etc. Just don't do it. Okay, so keep it. When I talk with staff people or CFOs, I say, you're sitting at work. Tom, you said, I got to get rid of these speaker notes. Okay, perfect. How do I do that? How do I turn this into a 5-minute task? And so I believe the skills shortage, you know, it's absolutely huge at getting things done. But as you found out, it helps you learn that process.
Yeah.
You now know how to go about putting a macro into, well, getting the code and putting it into PowerPoint,
Right.
which I don't even know that process because I haven't done it.
Right.
So, it's a matter of just thinking about it. And then, so it was skills gap and also the talent pipeline. I believe that the talent pipeline is going to be hugely benefited by this because you're going to have people doing 20 to 40% more work just because they don't have to spend time on the tedious, mind numbing, boring stuff that we have to do as accountants. And I think that that's absolutely huge. And when I talk to CFOs or firm partners, etc., I always say, imagine if you knew your staff or your team in finance could be 20 to 40% more productive in 30 days. That's big. You cannot ignore that.
Yeah. Yeah, I think you're a great exemplar of how to start thinking about this differently. You and Glenn Hop, you're going to both be at this year's summit in Orlando, December 10th through the 12th. So we're excited about that.
Looking forward to it.
I know, I can't wait. It's going to be awesome. And all right, so let me ask you about this. I use this metaphor all the time from a philosopher named Jean Kabat-Zinn, who says you can't stop the waves, but you can learn how to surf. So when you start thinking about all this, are the waves getting bigger, and are they coming faster?
We thought it was crazy before, Tom. We've had that conversation. this is almost like impossible to keep up with.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm glad you brought that up, because one of the things I really try to focus on is hashtag narrow the path. Okay, there's so many AI tools. If you're going to get sidetracked by the 50 things I can do, I can create images, I can do this, I can, what are the ones that relate to what we do, and focus on those. So when I say ChatGPT, generative AI, we're really talking about Bing, Bard, and ChatGPT.
Yeah.
And keep it in an area where stay aware of the other stuff, but really try to zone in on something that will benefit you and take advantage of it.
And just go, and to your point, you got to just go play with it and try it, right? I mean, and once you do that, I think you're right. If you could do a little bit every day,
Yep.
it will get you very familiar with it, and you'll actually start seeing productive, and you'll be thinking of more productive things you can do. I've got a business trip this summer over in Copenhagen. And so I put that in and said, what should I be, I got a couple extra days. What should I do?
Yep.
Laid out a whole itinerary. It's like, it's just,
Yeah.
I mean, simple
Yeah.
thing, personal or business. It's
Yeah.
just amazing what it can do.
One of the things I'm doing, Tom, and I think I had mentioned this to you, is I'm working with clients where I'm taking the staff people and I'm saying, okay, we're going to do a 30-day, 60-second challenge. I mean, the idea is it takes 30 days to build a habit. And I give them tasks every day. They don't know what it is until the day of, and they can't do it at work. I mean, meaning they got to do it over lunch or in their personal time. And it's 30 straight days. You don't get weekends off. You've got to spend 30 days, 60 seconds to 2 minutes doing this one task. I've had people after 10 days going, this is crazy. And I go, that's the light bulb we want to get to go off.
That's pretty cool. All right, give me a couple examples. What are you telling them to do?
Write a formula to return the current name of the worksheet in a cell. Okay. Most people don't know how to do that.
Right.
I certainly couldn't do it from scratch. Write a macro to automate pivot tables on a worksheet when that worksheet is selected. Okay. And things like that. So
Yep.
if you don't, I focus on it. It isn't just Excel. One would be, I want you to summarize this article into 10 key concepts. Okay. Things that we all would want to do anyway. And what you realize is you couldn't do these things in I won't say an hour. It might take 15 to 20 minutes to do one. On the macro one, it might take longer than that. And literally you can do it in 60 seconds.
Yeah.
So they start to realize that when I'm sitting down with the tools that I'm using, I really have an advantage to accelerate a lot of what I have to do.
Yeah. It reminds me of when social media was early on, right? And we had a common comment we said is, it's just a tool. Use the tool. Don't let the tools use you. So
Right.
Don't get sucked into it and everything else, but take your time and just think about what can I do? Try it, learn from it, play around with it, right? That's the key thing. So
and be smart.
Yeah.
Don't be throwing stuff out there that you shouldn't put out there.
Yep. But you're right though. So ChatGPT, Google Bard, and Microsoft Bing are all versions now. And you're going to, it isn't going to be long. This is going to be built into just about every application we deal with in finance for sure.
Yeah.
And there are private APIs that if your company wanted to, you could get a private version of ChatGPT that you could integrate into some of your finance applications, et cetera, right?
That's right.
It's here now, and it's just going to accelerate. I mean, more than exponentially. It's just insane how fast it's going.
That's a great point, Tom. You can, if you access ChatGPT through the API, okay, and that's extra, you pay extra, it's not much, but that data is not used to train the model.
Right.
Okay, so you can put stuff like confidential information in there if you're accessing it through the API.
That's awesome. All right, so let's go to the final words of advice to our audience. This has been amazing. I could do this for another hour, I think. I know you talk a lot about the 100-hour asset rule, and how you keep that rate of learning greater than the rate of change. One of my favorite, phrases.
Yep.
So talk about that. How do you do this 100 days of learning and the 100-hour
Well,
asset thing?
Seth Godin, who but folks may or may not know, is a marketing guru, I'll call him, and puts out a blog. And one of his blog posts was the 100-hour asset. And I love it because it not only relates to ChatGPT, it relates to everything. If you invest 100 hours learning something, you will have an asset that is way ahead of most of your peers. And that's just a fact. In 100 hours, if you think of it in 100 hours, it's a lot. If you think of it in 200 days, it's 30 minutes a day. It's not a lot.
Right.
That's the way I want people to really think about ChatGPT. And trust me, this, Tom, once you get past like day 10, you're going to be putting in an hour a day.
But it will yield some huge results, and that, I think, therein is the point. I guess what we can do is, you had a great piece where you had a whole bunch of ChatGPT info in I think it was a PDF file. We'll post that in the comments so that you guys can all again, follow Don Tomoff on LinkedIn and Twitter. You're on Twitter also, right? You did
Yeah. Not as active as I am on LinkedIn, though.
Yeah, LinkedIn is definitely the place to do. Don't miss him and Glenn Hopper. He's another one you ought to follow. They're going to be talking about ChatGPT for CFOs at our Future Finance, December 10th through the 12th. Let's see. You got a Flipboard. You're a big Flipboard guy too, right?
Oh, yeah.
Go to flipboard.com/@dtomoff. And then look for his blog on Medium, medium.com/@dtomoffcpa. So some more reasons, and we'll put them in the comments here. But some great stuff there, Don. Thank you so much for joining us today, and for all of you out there, don't miss our other Future Ready Live sessions back here on LinkedIn, first and third Tuesday of every month at noon Eastern. Thanks again, Don.
Really appreciate it. Thanks, Tom. Great conversation.
Yes, it was.